As the nation awaits some politically charged decisions from the High Court, some new opinions with profound implications for immigration today on the Texas Standard.
Texas Standard is a production of KUT Austin, KERA North Texas, Houston Public Media, and Texas Public Radio in San Antonio.
I'm David Brown. Once again, the nation's highest court has waited till the end of their term to release decisions in some of the most closely watched cases. But today, a discussion of two just-released opinions with an outsized effect on the future of immigration enforcement and policy. Also, Venezuelans in Texas hoping to help people back home affected by this week's devastating back-to-back earthquakes. This Week in Texas Politics looks at new polling data in the closely watched U.S. Senate race in Texas, plus a World Cup update and a whole lot more as the Texas Standard gets underway. Right after this. No matter where you are, it's Texas Standard Time on this 26th day of June 2026. With the U.S. Supreme Court racing toward the end of its term, next week could bring a flood of major opinions. Fasten your seatbelts. I'm David Brown. Great to have you with us. You know, yesterday was hardly quiet, with orders released just before we went to the airwaves. The justices handed down two significant immigration rulings that could reshape how the federal government enforces immigration law and who can remain in the United States. Now, in one case, the court said migrants who are turned back before they physically enter the U.S. don't have the legal right to seek asylum from outside the border. In another, it ruled that the executive branch generally has the final say over temporary protected status, or TPS. That limits the ability of courts to review decisions to grant or end those protections. Both decisions were 6-3, both split along ideological lines, both strengthening the discretion of the executive branch in carrying out immigration policy. Supporters say the rulings reinforce the limits that Congress placed on the courts and give the government greater authority to manage the border. Critics, however, argue that they reduce important legal safeguards for people seeking protection in the U.S. Now, to help us understand what the court actually decided and what these rulings are likely to mean in practice, we're joined by Denise Gilman, law professor and co-director of the Immigration Clinic at the University of Texas School of Law. Professor, welcome back to the Texas Standard.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into the implications, let's begin with the holdings themselves. Two cases here. There's Mullen v. Doe, the TPS case, and Mullen v. Al Otro Lado, which had to do with, seems like to me, what the term arrival in the U.S. means for purposes of claiming asylum protection. In plain language, what did the court decide in, let's begin with Doe, the TPS case?
Right. So in the TPS case, the court allowed the Trump administration, to end temporary protected status for Syrians and Haitians and gave the government broad latitude in general to decide when there could be an end to temporary protected status for any particular population.
What about Mullen v. Al Otro Lado? What that had to do with asylum?
So this case really changes entirely the system for seeking asylum at the border. Up until now, it had always been the case, since the Refugee Act was adopted in 1980, that you could come to the border, present at a bridge or at a port of entry, and seek asylum. And now the government is saying that as long as U.S. officials keep you away from the very border itself, that you do not have the right to seek asylum at the border.
Help me with something, though, when it comes to that idea of asylum. It was my understanding, looking back at the way that other countries have dealt with asylum, that part of the challenge for those seeking asylum or wanting to claim asylum was actually getting inside the country that they're asking for asylum from. Right? I mean, isn't U.S. an outlier here, or has it been an outlier?
Well, I do think that this idea of preventing people physically from reaching the very border is a bit unusual. International law makes very clear that if you are presenting at a border, that you should be granted the right to at least enter a system to seek asylum, that you can't be pushed away from the very border. Are there other countries that do this as well? Yes, there are. And they have been questioned and condemned for that practice as well, because the international understanding is that if you can make it to the border, you should be allowed to enter the asylum seeking system.
You shouldn't have to put a foot over the line. in other words.
Exactly. Because otherwise, it really incentivizes governments to stop you right at that physical point of entry. And that really then just creates a situation where people are forced to cross the border undetected in order to make their way into the country and seek asylum, which really isn't in anybody's interests.
Well, both opinions seem to give the executive branch more latitude in carrying out immigration policy. Is that the central legal principle at work here, or is there something more specific connecting these decisions?
Well, I think that would be the main point, is that the government now has greater ability to carry out this mass deportation campaign that the second Trump administration has made such a focal point of the current administration.
We haven't talked much about that TPS case. It wasn't really about whether ending protections was a good policy. It seemed to be largely about whether courts can actually review those decisions at all, it seems to me. That seems like a rather significant distinction.
Well, that's right. What the court said is that there is no way for the courts to intervene in the policy decision or even in double checking the procedures that were followed in making a decision about TPS. The only thing that can be reviewed by the federal courts is the constitutionality of the decision. I do think that's the most substantive part of the ruling, is not just that the courts won't generally intervene in the executive's decision, but the idea that this was not a real constitutional question, even though serious equal protection claims were raised, given the explicit racist comments made about Haitian TPS holders specifically.
It seemed like that the comments that President Trump had made, that came up as an issue in this case, right?
Exactly, because the court ruled that the only issues that could be considered by the federal courts are the constitutional issues, the equal protection claims became front and center in terms of the substantive ruling of the case. And the main equal protection claims related to the fact that it seemed pretty clear that there were underlying racial motivations for the end of TPS, especially for Haitians, although certainly some comments made about Syrians as well. And yet the Supreme Court decided that those explicit racist comments were not enough to make out an equal protection claim, essentially given the fact that all TPS determinations are suspect at this point. The administration is attempting to end TPS for all nationalities. But the fact that there are racist undertones to the end of various TPS programs, to me, doesn't take away the fact that they are racist.
Looking beyond these two cases, do you see them as narrow rulings, or do they signal a broader direction from the Court on Immigration and Executive Power?
Well, I think we've just seen again and again since the second Trump administration began that the Supreme Court has allowed the Trump administration to move forward with its mass detention and deportation campaign. And I fear that further decisions from the court will be in that same direction of giving really broad latitude to deport migrants, regardless of their long-term ties here, regardless of their equities, regardless of their valid claims to refugee protection.
Denise Gilman is a law professor and co-director of the Immigration Clinic at the University of Texas School of Law. Professor, thank you for taking time to join us on The Standard.
Thank you for having me.
Texas's biggest city is planning to spend about $18 billion over the next 5 years on infrastructure. That's a pretty broad term, infrastructure. Exactly where that money's going is outlined in a new capital improvement plan Houston City Council approved this week. But in the past, big plans like this have often been delayed. And Houston Public Media's Dominic Anthony Walsh reports many Houstonians complain they've had trouble getting improvements to their neighborhoods added to the list at all.
It's a Thursday in the Cottage Grove neighborhood, Katie Neiman's least favorite day of the week.
And so here we are on trash day, a typical trash day scenario here. One car can get through, and God forbid you have someone trying to get the other direction.
As the garbage truck moves along the narrow street dotted with potholes, a car reverses to get out of the way.
It requires a lot of patience to live in this neighborhood and kindness, or else you're going to lose your mind.
That's on the west side of Cottage Grove. The 100-year-old neighborhood is near Memorial Park. But on one street in the neighborhood, it's a different story, thanks to the city's Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP. I'm on Darlene Street on the east side of Cottage Grove, and this is one of the streets that was actually an example of what the CIP process could do. The street and sidewalks over here are wide, cars parked on both sides with room for people to still navigate. That changes once you leave Darlene Street. The sidewalks often end, the streets have potholes. All of this area is actually on the capital improvement plan, unlike West Cottage Grove. Darlene Street is the first tiny piece of the more than $29 million street and drainage project for the east side of the neighborhood, which has been on the list of projects for about 10 years without much progress. The city's CIP is full of infrastructure projects across Houston, many of which are repeatedly delayed. The newly approved CIP comes with a nearly $18 billion price tag. It includes major projects like a $3.2 billion overhaul of a water purification plant and $3.5 billion for wastewater treatment facilities. There's also about $1.6 billion in street improvements and $1.3 billion in stormwater mitigation. In Cottage Grove, Katie Neiman and other residents have been trying to get the west side of their neighborhood added to the plan for several years, without much luck.
Ultimately, we need that CIP project. So we did go to City Council.
Next speaker. Katie Neiman.
Neiman and some of her neighbors spoke to the City Council and Mayor John Whitmire in January 2025.
Cottage Grove is facing a crisis. Our infrastructure is falling apart, and I cannot overstate the urgent need for repairs, particularly when it comes to our streets and ditches.
I've looked at your infrastructure request.
Whitmire said he knows the area well. It was part of his district during his 5 decades in the state legislature.
I know of your years of neglect by the city of Houston. It's one of the reasons I ran for mayor, and my administration is focused on it.
The Cottage Grove West improvements are now in the capital improvement inventory, meaning the project is not funded but is in the planning pipeline for consideration.
The CIP is a living, breathing document in the sense that every year projects get shuffled around, funding gets shuffled around, and a lot of times it's considered an infrastructure wish list.
Newly elected District C council member Joe Panzarella now represents the area.
The issue is that these projects a lot of times are so big in scale, it just takes multiple years. I know Cottage Grove East, for example, is one that was recommended in 2015, right? And so it is frustrating and it's difficult to just kind of bring together so many partners and so much funding, frankly.
According to Panzarella, major improvements to East Cottage Grove are expected to kick off later this year, after about a decade on the wish list. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh in Houston.
Major businesses tend to store their data off-site for safety reasons. You want to have redundancy in case of hackers or something like that. But for most folks, do we really need to be storing our data in the cloud somewhere, paying that extra money for Google Drive or iCloud? What about storing our data at home? Omar Gallaga with the practicality, pros and cons, and more as the Texas Standard continues.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Casa. For a child in foster care, small moments today can have a big impact tomorrow. More on how lending time and support can help make a difference at becomeacasa.org.
This is the Texas Standard. I'm Laura Rice. As of Friday morning, the death toll from Wednesday's earthquakes in Venezuela had risen close to 600. Nearly 3,000 people were reported injured in the back-to-back powerful earthquakes. Houston is home to one of the largest Venezuelan communities in the U.S., and many of those folks are already turning their worry into action. The Texas Newsroom's Lucio Vasquez reports immigrant families are putting together donation drives to help people back home.
In a hot cargo garage in Katy, a Houston suburb, volunteers at a pop-up donation drive packed boxes with canned tuna, diapers, and medicine. Many were Venezuelans living in the U.S. trying to help from thousands of miles away. Ariana Ricardia first came early Thursday to donate hygiene items like pads, tampons, and body soap. Then she stayed to help pack boxes.
One thing I admire about being Venezuelan is our resilience, being there for each other, and then just supporting each other during the tough times.
Ricardia was with her mother when she learned of 2 devastating earthquakes that struck Venezuela Wednesday night. She called her grandmother in Caracas. Ricardia was relieved to hear her voice. She was safe. But relief quickly gave way to a different feeling, the need to help.
being far away from your family and being outside and being part of the outside is very important for us to come together and support our people.
Venezuelan officials on Thursday night said there may be hundreds of people still trapped under debris. The Trump administration has already pledged $150 million for relief efforts. And throughout the country, donation drives have opened, including here in Katy, which has one of the largest Venezuelan communities in the country. People around here call it Katyzuela, a place dotted with dozens of Venezuelan-owned businesses like bakeries and restaurants. At another nearby donation site at Mi Querencia Latin Market, Amelia Millan was also moved to donate after seeing the destruction in her home country. She says her family in Venezuela is safe, but many of their homes were badly damaged.
I wish I could get on a plane and be there right now. Believe me, my heart and my mind are there right now. It's very hard to concentrate on work or anything else.
Back inside the hot cargo garage, volunteers sorted donations for hours. Between packing boxes, many paused to write messages of support on a wall near the garage's entrance, beside a Venezuelan flag. One message read, "Estamos contigo, Venezuela." We are with you, Venezuela. I'm Lucio Vasquez in Houston.
And you're listening to the Texas Standard. I'm Angela Kocherga. Cloud storage and remote backup options are more available than ever, but some people crave an alternative. They want to keep their media, games, photos, or documents close, stored in their own homes on hard drives they own, rather than paying to keep the data in the cloud. Maybe you're worried about an internet outage or don't like the high cost of cloud services. Perhaps you subscribe to the idea of data sovereignty. That is retaining full control of your digital files. Whatever the reason, it can be hard to figure out how to bring your data home, especially in these days of high memory prices. Our tech expert Omar Gallaga has been on his own data storage journey, and he's here to tell us more about it. Omar, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you wrote for CNET about the effort to create your own local storage option, and you said that journey was like a rabbit hole. Is pulling back from the cloud something a lot of people are thinking about these days?
You know, I thought it was just me. I have an aging external hard drive with all of our data backed up, family photos, baby pictures, all that stuff. And it was getting, the company that made it, it's going out of business. So I thought I got to move this stuff to a new place, find a new storage backup. So I started exploring that. And I fell down a rabbit hole of NAS, network attached storage devices. And they're basically like external hard drives, but attached to a network. You can get to them from your computer. You can get to the data from your phone. So the idea is to be able to have that data on a network where you can access it. You can invite people, family members to access that information versus just something that's just attached with a cable to your computer and only goes one way.
No, it sounds like something a lot of people would think about, especially since we have so much stored on the cloud, and a lot of that we don't want to lose track of or something happen, like you said. Now, this sounds pretty complicated to manage, and it might be expensive, too. Who is NAS right for, and what are some of the things you can do with one of those?
Oh, it's nerdy, all right. It's incredibly nerdy, and in a big rabbit hole. But I think these devices can be really useful. It's a good way to manage not just your important data files that you want to back up, but also your media files, your videos, your photos, any movies that you own that you're able to access, and you can stream them to yourself. You're not having to pay Netflix or Hulu to stream movies that you already own, assuming you do own them and you have access to them. So this is a way. What I'm seeing is a lot of these communities online around NAS devices, and these are people building media libraries. They're using software like Plex or Jellyfin to manage their video libraries. They're managing their photos and uploading them directly from their phones to kind of create their own photo libraries. They're sharing those photos with family members and others. It is a way that the whole data sovereignty concept is, I want to have the data here, not on some cloud service. I don't want everything just on iCloud or just on Google Photos. I want those local copies here and available, in the event that I don't want to use those services anymore. So a lot of it is just taking control of your data and organizing it and having these local copies. And the hardware to do that has gotten easier to use, more accessible. It is pricey right now with all the hardware pricing spikes, but it is kind of within reach of someone like me who is not a technical, is not an IT administrator.
Oh, well, I sometimes think you are. Well, it sounds great. I think it sounds great. But if you do want fewer remote services, what are some other ways to do that short of buying NAS?
I mean, if you have a computer with a lot of hard drive space or an external hard drive, you can kind of do some of the same things if the data might not be as accessible, remotely or outside the home or shareable. But I do still think it's very important to have a local backup of things in addition to an online backup. And that's sort of part of the whole backup solution. If you have an external hard drive with all your data on it, that doesn't protect you if there's a fire, if there's a burglary, if something, catastrophic power failure. So it's important to kind of have multiple instances of your most important data in multiple places.
No, you just described my worst nightmare. Well, think about that. Yeah. Well, for other hardcore local file stores like you, what should they consider when picking out and setting up a NAS?
Yeah, I mean, I think expandability is the thing that I hear a lot from, these people who are really hardcore about NAS devices. They're always on the lookout for more storage. I need more hard drives. I need more space. I got my library is growing. So you want to have something that's expandable. The model that I bought has 4 hard drive bays and I've only filled 3 of them. So if I wanted to add additional space, I could buy another hard drive or I could buy larger hard drives. So there are some basic ones that are just 1 drive or 2 drives. I would opt for at least 4 if you think you're going to have a really big growing library of files and videos and photos over time. And for me, this is a long-term investment. This is not a 1-year solution. I'm looking, 5, 10, 15 years down the line.
Yeah, you're all in. Omar Gallega always keeps his photos and old journal entries within easy reach, and he writes about it all for CNET. He joins us here every week on The Standard. Thank you, Omar.
I sure appreciate it. Thanks for geeking out with me.
The Texas News Roundup is just ahead, plus the story of how the Dallas Library came into possession of the only copy of the Declaration of Independence west of the Mississippi.
Support for Texas Standard comes from HEB and the My HEB app, which is available for download, and shopping fresh departments like seafood, produce, bakery, and deli, and scheduling curbside pickup or home delivery. More at HEB.com. Support for Texas Standard comes from Half Price Books, a Texas-bred new and used bookstore, proudly supporting public media and sustainability by keeping books, music, and other media in circulation. Store locations and more information at hpb.com.
From the Texas Newsroom, I'm Matt Harrod. The State Board of Education is expected to give final approval today to major changes with Texas's social studies curriculum. Our Bianca Seward reports Christian biblical readings are expected to be included as well.
The proposed changes would de-emphasize world history and refocus social studies lessons to Texas and U.S. history. The biblical texts being added include Christian stories about Adam and Eve and the parable of the prodigal son. Nearly 500 people signed up to speak to the board this week, many voicing concerns for the changes, others encouraging the board to approve them. Carrie Griffiths, the executive director of the public education advocacy group Our Schools, Our Democracy, said the board is failing in their duty to serve Texas public schools.
It's special interests driving the decisions, not professionals, not educators, not the community, not taxpayers, not Texans.
If approved, the changes would take effect for the 2030-2031 school year. I'm Bianca Seward in Houston.
The Texas Democratic Convention is underway in Corpus Christi. Many topics are expected to be discussed today, including the state's new school voucher program. Cynthia Christner is from Brazos County.
We really have a problem with the support of public schools, and the voucher program is just a steal to help the wealthiest among us. And it has come at the expense of public schools, which the majority of us are products of.
This evening, attendees will hear from gubernatorial hopeful Gina Hinojosa and U.S. Senate nominee James Talarico. There are now 24 confirmed cases of the New World screwworm in Texas. The flesh-eating parasite threatens the state's cattle industry, but as Texas Public Radio's David Martin Davies reports, there's also concern for the state's deer population.
Texas now has more than 5 million wild deer, but before the screwworm was eradicated in the 60s, it's estimated the parasite killed 80% of newborn fawns. Dr. Galen Wilmeth Burleson is a South Texas veterinarian.
Unfortunately, with wildlife, there is no proven treatment.
She says older generations remember when the scourge kept South Texas deer populations low.
My dad can tell me stories about when he was a kid, we didn't have a lot of deer down here because of screwworm infestations.
A major decline in the deer population would hurt the South Texas economy. The region is internationally known for its large whitetail bucks, and hunting supports landowners, outfitters, and rural businesses. I'm David Martin Davies in San Antonio.
And Texas is in the middle of tick season, and public health experts say emergency room visits are higher than usual this year. Health officials recommend wearing protective clothing, using insect repellent, and checking for ticks after spending time outdoors. I'm Matt Harib in the Texas Newsroom.
Support for these Texas headlines comes from Texas Monthly, producer of Where the River Took Us, a podcast from the July 4th floods, from survivor Aaron Parsley's perspective, through the voices of his family and others, telling the story of grief, healing, and survival.
33 minutes past the hour, Texas Standard Time. I'm Laura Rice. Did you know that Texas has a copy of the Declaration of Independence? It's called The Lost Copy, found in a Philadelphia bookstore after a century. After a minor odyssey, the document now usually sits on the 7th floor of the Dallas Public Library. It's one of just 26 copies still around from that landmark day 250 years ago. Texas Standard spoke with 3 folks down at the Dallas Public Library about this paper celebrity.
So this is considered the lost copy, that it was found in a bookshop in Philadelphia. I think the bookshop was closing, and as they were clearing out the inventory, they found this copy, and it went up for auction, and some Dallas businessmen purchased it at auction, and they donated it to the city of Dallas.
There were thought to be about 200 originally printed, but there are 26 known to exist, and we are fortunate to have one of them.
Melissa Deese, Assistant Director of Dallas Public Library.
Misty Mayberry, I'm a certified archivist and manager of Dallas History and Archives.
Kristen Calver, I'm our Programs and Partnerships Administrator.
People don't realize, they think about the Declaration of Independence that's handwritten and signed, and they don't think about the fact that, well, when we didn't have the internet to spread information that like we do now, they had to have some way to let everyone in the colonies know that this declaration had been written, and that's where these copies came from. They were the 200 some copies that were printed on July 4th after it was signed and distributed around the colonies.
The city of Dallas acquired it in 1982. I do know that when it first came to the city of Dallas, it was displayed in City Hall, and we had a firecracker of a library director named Lillian Bradshaw, and she heavily advocated for it being brought over to the Dallas Public Library. She wanted it to be in a space that was open and accessible to the public. So a special room was built for it. The lighting is dimmed. It's in a sealed case. The Friends of the Dallas Public Library were instrumental in helping us acquire that and getting the space built. We keep temperature controls. There's a humidity monitor in there, just kind of standard archival practices.
It just has kind of a gravitas when you walk over here. Just the fact of walking into this dimly lit space with this, lit document behind glass, that even if you didn't know what it was, it kind of makes you like, oh, I need to look closer at this. This must be something important.
People get quiet. People get quiet when they come in here, because I forget we're here all the time, and I just, you're the second person I've shown it today, and I'm chatting along, and it is like a moment of gravity where people kind of want to take it in, I think, and really think about it, and it does kind of give you chills, if you really think about what we have here.
When the touring production of Hamilton came to Dallas, we took it to the theater, and we had it in a display case with a guard standing next to it at all times. So as people came in to attend Hamilton, they could view it.
We are trying to get with our partners across Dallas, like the DMA and the Holocaust and Human Rights Museum, the Arboretum, the Symphony, and we're all planning programming around the birthday of our country. So one thing we're trying to do with the programming that I do think relates really well to having this year is after we get through the actual July 4th celebration, the big ball and all of that, is really focus on the meaning of democracy and civic engagement and how that relates to our country. And we want to do a lot of that through programming, especially going into the midterm elections. And I think we really have the significance to be able to do that and it be meaningful partially because we have this here.
This is the only copy west of the Mississippi, and you don't realize that that's so significant of a thing that it's one thing to be in Boston or in Massachusetts where, you know, all of that, those kind of historical sites and moments are right there and you live with it every day. But the further west you get, the more that doesn't feel like a real thing that happened because there's no evidence of that around you. But you know, here is a chance that, yeah, it is. Here's something right here in Texas that you can see and experience.
Those were the voices of Dallas Public Library's Assistant Director Melissa Dees, Kristen Calvert, the Programs and Partnerships Administrator, and Misty Mayberry, Manager of Dallas History and Archives. Right now, visitors can see the document on display at the Hall of State in Fair Park. We'll also get pictures and more up online at texasstandard.org.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Good Spread, an Austin-based mineral sunscreen brand seeking to make clean, reef-safe SPF for every body under the sun. Now at H-E-B stores across Texas. More at goodspreadsuncare.com.
It's the Texas Standard. I'm David Brown. For the next several weeks, Texas isn't just hosting soccer matches. It's one of the centers of the biggest sporting event on the planet. Millions of fans are watching, hundreds of thousands of folks traveling, and for a month, the World Cup is putting Texas on a global stage. And on Monday, that stage belonged to Argentina's Lionel Messi. In a match played in Dallas, Messi scored twice against Austria, sending Argentina into the knockout rounds and becoming the all-time leading scorer in men's World Cup history. So, what else has happened in the tournament so far? Which teams have surprised? And as the final rounds approach, what should even casual fans here in Texas be watching for? Jimmy Moss and Juan Garcia are the hosts of Vamos Verde, a podcast following Austin FC and the world of soccer based out of our home station, KUT in Austin, Texas. Jimmy, Juan, welcome to the Texas Standard.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Jimmy Messi breaking this record, big moment. There was a massive reaction from the crowd there. What does this mean for his legacy as a soccer player?
Well, I honestly don't know. His legacy is pretty set as is. It's rare that someone crosses the 34, 35 age threshold in soccer. Mm-hmm. Well, really, in most athletic endeavors, right. And actually increase their legacy. You know, they're standing in the world of that sport. Since that demarcation, he won the World Cup in 2022. He has proven himself as basically a starter of igniter of things here in Major League Soccer, igniter of interest. I mean, Inter Miami plays to sold out crowds in larger stadiums when they go to different cities, and now he's back. And there was a lot of talk that he would not go to the World Cup at all this year, and now he is taking over. He scored so far. Now the weekend games have not happened, but so far he scored all the goals for Argentina, and he is breaking records. I don't know how long these records will last because there is another gentleman named Kylian Mbappe who is just behind him. Yeah, he is 2 goals ahead of Mbappe, and who tied the man that they both are about to pass. Juan,
let me bring you in here. Let's talk a little bit more about Kylian Mbappe, French striker who's been on fire, 27 years old already, 16 World Cup goals, 4 of those in this tournament already. You think he's going to surpass Messi or no?
It's hard to bet against that. I mean, it took Messi 6 World Cups to break the record at 39 years old. Mbappe at 27 in just his 3rd World Cup. He already matched Miroslav Klose, the guy we were talking about that used to hold the record. If he can keep the level of play up, which is kind of an important caveat to make, I think it's likely that he breaks the record eventually. And, you know, we can't even rule out that he breaks Messi's record this tournament, depending on how the knockout stage goes.
Wow. Yeah. Well, the U.S. has had a great start to this World Cup so far, but they lost a game to Turkey last night. How are you feeling about their chances for a deep run?
Well, if Americans don't like to lose, so there's that. You know, any loss feels grander than it really is. But in the big picture, they had already qualified for the knockout round. Their game with the round of 32 was already set before kickoff of this game. So there was literally nothing to play for. Don't tell that to the players, though. This is an opportunity for them to show that they can perform. They can be a good sub when they need it. And, they made 9 changes to the lineup last night out of 11 possible. So there wasn't that much to play for, but you know, it was a good opportunity for those players to show that they can do well when needed.
Is it a pipe dream that you could see the U.S. and Britain playing on July 4th? I've heard people talk about that.
That possibility has changed now because of the way the bracket worked out. I think the next game for the U.S. would be July 6th if they were to win. Yeah, that was a possibility, and I think the way that the
math ain't gonna make it happen.
Machinations did not work out. The U.S. though, they've looked as good as they may ever look, you know, in a World Cup. The first 2 games, if they can continue what that was, they can make a run. This first game is winnable in the knockout round. What happens after that is, you know, it's dreams and duct tape, but who knows? It might work.
Juan, we have a lot of Mexico fans here in Texas. They've won all 3 games in the group stage. How are they looking headed into the round of 32?
Well, they've won all 3 games in the group stage, and that gives them a lot of momentum heading into the knockouts, especially after the beautiful moment they gave a longtime goalkeeper, Memo Ochoa, letting him go out for 20 minutes, appear in his 6th World Cup in front of the home fans at the Azteca.
Let's hear for the old guys.
Right. That said, their big wins came against what on paper looked like the weaker sides in the group, and they struggled against what could be considered the most talented team in their qualifying group, which was South Korea. And that's a team that ended up finishing last in the group. As they say, soccer is not played on a stat sheet, it is played on grass.
Juan, anything that, any other storylines you're watching for in the rest of the tournament?
Well, we're starting to get to one of my favorite parts of the tournament, which is trying to figure out who could win their first ever World Cup. It's one of my favorite things to look for ever since I saw Spain win the 2010 World Cup.
Yeah.
I've got 2 that are not going to surprise anybody because they look fantastic, and they always look fantastic at the World Cup.
And they are?
The Netherlands and Portugal.
All right. So, Jimmy, what about you? Anything you're paying attention to for the rest of the World Cup?
I am, a homer at heart, I guess, and I am looking for the performance of the Texas boys, which there are quite a few of on the U.S. men's team. There's Weston McKennie, who's parents were in the military. I think he was born in Germany, but they settled in Little Elm, which is in North Texas, which if you're in that area, Frisco, Plano, McKinney, Little Elm, if it's not high school football season, you're probably on your way to a club soccer match. So,
that's like
I mean,
the Texas soccer.
It's the hub, right?
Yeah.
So McKinney comes, his parents live there. Ricardo Pepi and Alex Andejas come from El Paso, although Pepi went into the FC Dallas Academy. Chris Richards originally from Alabama, but because competitive soccer, so they'll pull you into the system. He made it through Houston and then eventually to the FC Dallas Academy. Now he plays in Europe, but and the honorary Texan, Gio Reyna, whose dad Claudio came to Austin for Austin FC. The family still lives here. The sister plays locally in high school and club. So Gio Reyna we'll claim him as well. I'm just watching those guys play, see how well they do.
You know, we just have a minute left. Not much time to talk about this, but what does this do for soccer writ large? I know you guys cover FC Austin, and I'm just curious, has this generated the sort of excitement that can be transformative, or are we looking at sort of the status quo?
Well, the entire Major League Soccer is a result of the '94 World Cup. I mean, and probably in some level, the NWSL and professional women's sports is because of the 99 World Cup. If there's a reasonably good performance here from the U.S. team, a reasonably entertaining show from anyone, there's a good chance this continues to take off.
Juan?
The folks that are coming to visit from all over the world are showing a lot of Americans why it is that they love their country, and they're showing them why it is that they love soccer. And I can imagine there's a lot of people discovering the sport for the first time, but it won't be the last time they're going to be keeping up with the game.
Juan Garcia, Jimmy Moss, hosts of Vamos Verde, a podcast dedicated to Austin FC. Gentlemen, thanks so much.
Thanks, David.
Thanks.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Monthly, producer of Where the River Took Us, a podcast about the July 4th floods from survivor Aaron Parsley's perspective, through the voices of his family and others, telling the story of grief, healing, and survival. Available on all podcast platforms. Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, committed to strengthening the state's workforce and its communities through safety and wellness grants and education initiatives. More at texasmutual.com/community impact.
My name is Carrie Ann Holtz, and I'm a poet with Typewriter Rodeo. We write custom poems on vintage typewriters about anything you want. Autonomous vehicles. Try this. Couple of fingers doing their best impression of a tip of the hat, except they're peeking out and just above your steering wheel, at speed, saying howdy to the guy who made way, the gal who waved first, the biker passing by, hey. Your finger nod says, hey, y'all. And it feels nice. It feels right to connect like that on an endless 2-lane Texas highway or a busy downtown light. Hey, my bud. Hey, fellow human. Catching my eye, reminding me how we're just out here being alive. Let's see the robots do that. I dare them to try. I'm Carrie Ann Holt, and you're listening to Texas Standard.
You can check out the Typewriter Rodeo every Friday right here on The Standard. Got a suggestion for a custom poem you'd like to hear? Send it on over. You just might hear it on the radio. But for now, it's time for the week that was in Texas politics. Jasper Scherer is politics editor for the Texas Tribune. Jasper, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This week, the Texas Politics Project at UT Austin released some interesting new polling data. Part of it related to the U.S. Senate race, showing that Ken Paxton and James Talarico appear to be, what, neck and neck? Is that what it looks like to you?
Yeah, that's right. It's Paxton up by a percentage point within the margin of error.
Uh-huh.
And, I think this is sort of a kind of a choose your own adventure as far as how to interpret this. On the one hand, lots of positive trends for Paxton, who, this in the same pollster's survey back in April, he was down 8 percentage points. So that's, significant pickup there on his end. And, a lot of that is just, Republican voters are starting to come home to him more. That past survey was done in the heat of this really nasty, GOP primary.
Right.
So, Talarico seeing some of the crossover support fade a bit. But on the other hand, he's also doing a whole lot better than pretty much any other Democrat in, recent history in Texas, running statewide. Even Beto O'Rourke was, not polling this well around the same time.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
So, like I said, choose your own adventure. Some warning signs flashing for Talarico, but also plenty of reason for him to be optimistic about where he's at.
You said warning signs for Talarico. I hadn't heard that. What's that about?
Well, I just think that with Paxton's gains,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It's not trending in the right direction for him.
I see. Well, I want to shift gears to Texas Democrats more broadly because they started their statewide convention in Corpus Christi yesterday. What should folks know about this Democratic convention? What actually happens at an event like this?
Yeah, a lot of it is really inside baseball party stuff, but also plenty of things that could spill over into the real world. It'll be all, really focused on the party trying to unify behind its, slate of candidates after a competitive primary season. It'll be kind of the first time that some of these new voices will be showcased on a bigger stage.
There's a lot of national attention focused on Texas Democrats, too.
That's right. Yeah, there's, J.B. Pritzker from Illinois, Bernie Sanders, to name a couple of the national figures who are coming in to speak, just kind of highlights how prominent Texas is under the microscope this cycle. But, I think there are also some notable absences on the speaker list. Jasmine Crockett, who was, defeated by James Talarico in that contentious Senate primary, is not speaking, and sort of a continuation of her, kind of playing coy with coming out and supporting Talarico. And I think there are some Dems who are getting a little antsy about how Talarico is going to fare with black voters if Crockett doesn't come around for him. So, something to watch over the coming months.
For sure. And you can keep up with what's happening in Texas politics over at texastribune.org. That's where Jasper Scherer is politics editor. Jasper, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, David. You too.
And you are listening to the Texas Standard.
With summer settling in, we asked one simple question. How do you beat the Texas heat? I'm Wells Dunbar with the Texas Standard, and summer in Texas means everybody has a strategy. Some folks embrace it, some folks endure it, and some even want to fact-check us. Here's our first listener.
Howdy. My name's Richard Queen, and I grew up down in South Texas in the Rio Grande Valley where it gets hotter than the hinges of Hades in the summer. I was amused by Wells Dunbar's comments about his son's scout trip.
Is that right?
I was an Eagle Scout, and we didn't have all those things like solar-powered fans and that thing you get wet and put around your neck and everything. Maybe there's a new merit badge like keeping cool in the summer or something.
No, it's just called primitive camping during a heat advisory. Anyway,
the way I stay cool here in Austin is I swim at Deep Eddy, and I feel really cool for the rest of the day. And by the way, guys, it's not that hot yet.
Believe it or not, that sentiment is shared. Brady Bragg says he's taking a different approach to the season, and he's not complaining one bit.
Honestly, it hasn't been as hot this summer as I might have expected. And the landscape is so lush and green, even though it has been humid. My backyard is just amazing, and I've had birds coming all the time and nesting, and it's just really wonderful. I get out early in the morning and take my walks before the sun is up too high. The creeks are running, the birds are chirping. It's just marvelous. Summer is definitely a time to slow down in Texas a little bit. Read a book, swim, lay by the water, stay in the shade, drink iced tea. It's all good. And I am not going to complain at all about the humidity. It could be worse. We could live in Florida.
Whether you're staying cool in the water, under the shade, or just changing your attitude, there's more than one way to make peace with the Texas summer. We want to hear how you're doing it. Leave us a voicemail message at texasstandard.org/talk. I'm Wells Dunbar, and this is the Talk of Texas.
Oh, it is indeed. Alas, it's the last Talk of Texas for this week because we're out of time for the big broadcast. But the news continues 24/7 at texasstandard.org. And you can always look us up on social media. Just look for Texas Standard there. Our producers and reporters include Sarah Ash, Shelley Brisbane, Michael Marks, and Sean Saldana. Raul Alonso is our digital producer. Leah Scarpelli is our director. Casey Cheek is our technical director. Texas Standard summer interns include Portia Goins and Charlie Sharp. The managing editor of the Texas Standard is Gabriel Munoz. Our managing producer is Laura Rice. Our executive producer is Rhonda Fanning. We'll be back here on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend.
Philanthropic support for Texas Standard comes from Casey and Scott O'Hare, the Winkler Family Foundation, Lynn Dobson and Greg Waldridge, Adrian Killam, and the George Huntington family. Would your company or organization like to be a sponsor as well? Contact your local station for opportunities within your community. For statewide sponsorships, visit TexasPublicMediaNetwork.com.